everybody. So this will be a video about my anxiety, my past, pretty much. So the reason why I chose to do this video is because somebody on Instagram said that that I should make a video about my anxiety and about my experiences on it and what I learned and all that. So this video will be dedicated to that as well. I'll also talk about my other issues that I had, not just anxiety. I mean, from my previous video, you probably figured that I do have anxiety issues. That's correct, and I've actually had anxiety issues since I was like 9. But on top of that, I've also had like depression, suicidal thoughts. So yeah, like mostly recurring, like it's just been up and down, basically like a roller coaster. And I can tell you that 2020 has been the shittiest roller coaster by far. I mean, I've just been going through so many changes. I've been growing. Part of it is hormones. I'm a late bloomer. It affects you and stuff. So yeah. Part of it is just maturity, hopefully. And part of it is just going through new experiences, I'm applying to jobs, I'm doing interviews. I got a job this past year, a part-time job, minimum wage, I'm in university, just a bunch of changes like the past year actually. So because being an adult is like a new experience for me, like there's definitely things that have been affecting my mental health because, basically there's the challenge of trying to adapt to being an adult and the experiences that come with it. So that sometimes I have trouble with. I mean, I think it's normal, like when you're put in an unfamiliar situation for some time, it can cause like anxiety, right? And for somebody who already has anxiety issues, yeah, it's tough. So yeah. Oh, by the way, just a note about this video, I'm not going to be doing it like all in one shot because like, my life is just like at the moment a series of like interruptions of, different things happening different times. So to do this all in one shot is just not possible with my schedule, by the way. So you'll see me wearing different clothes, hair is a bit different. My mom just bought me a cute top, so I thought I'd, wear it for the video. I think it beats wearing, this, which is not really, I mean, it's from Wish, it's nice, but I think this is cuter for the video. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to talk about my experience right now. Just jump into it, all right? So it all started when I was 9 years old, and it went downhill from there. So I was watching The Amazing Race with my mom, and by the way, I have nothing against that show, just because I tell you about my negative experience watching like an episode, I still like it, okay? It doesn't affect, how I feel about it. So this woman basically fainted one episode on TV, and I was curious. I asked my mom, why did she faint? And my mom's like, oh, she's a bit dehydrated. I don't remember exactly what she said, but that's not important. And then, so right after the episode, I went to the kitchen and I poured myself a glass of water. I drank it, and then I poured myself another. I drank it, and then I kept doing this like throughout the day. I would go often to the kitchen and pour myself a glass of water, drink it. I was pissing a lot. Now I know there's nothing wrong with this, but I didn't know what was going on. Like, I didn't know it was a sign of something serious, okay? Because I wasn't understanding, like, how it, like, seeing that woman faint was affecting me. I was 9 years old. I mean, I wasn't that aware of my thoughts back then, so. I thought this was perfectly fine. I mean, I was hydrating myself. I was doing something healthy. I didn't think for a second that, it was turning into something bad. So a week later, I was sitting with my mom again watching TV. This time we were watching House Hunters, which isn't a show that really induces anxiety for me, but for some reason, you'll see. I pretty much had a panic attack. Just randomly, like I jumped out of my seat. My palms were sweating, my heart was racing, my teeth were chattering. It was just insane how that happened. Like from one second I was fine, the next second I was not. Like it was that fast. And my mom's like, she was trying to calm me down, and I felt really like weird. I felt like so scared about something. I didn't know what. So the next day, my mom brought me to the hospital. No, not the hospital, the doctor. Okay, and the doctor's like, okay, it seems like, you might have that might have been a panic attack, which she was completely right, And then the next day we went to the hospital and they took my blood pressure, they took my heart rate, and other stuff, and they saw that I was fine physically. So they tested my mental health. So I got interviewed by 3 psychologists that day, and the first one asked me weird questions like, well, at the time I thought it was weird, but now I could understand because they were trying to test for schizophrenia, depression, and other stuff, so that they really make sure that what I had was anxiety, that it was a panic attack, so, and that it's related to anxiety. So I thought like some questions were weird, and I was just kind of like, that scared me. Like, for example, I got asked, do you hear your name when it's called? Well, that was asked to my mom, and questions like that just scared me. And as a 9-year-old, I didn't understand like the significance of certain questions. I had my teddy bear. I was hanging on to it. I was hanging on to my mom's hand. It was just a scary experience for me, and definitely not one I'd redo again, because with all these questions coming at me, some of them I didn't even know how to reply. So yeah. So 2 weeks later, we received the diagnosis through mail, and it read that I had a panic disorder, and I was like, Mom, what is this? What does this mean? And it just goes to show you like how little I knew about like what I was going through, and how much and obviously like I learned a lot about it at that age, and so yeah, obviously during that time, like after my panic attack, like I had many more, so every day I had like several. Like I'd go to school, have a panic attack, and I'd have plenty of panic attacks there. When I was when I was in the car, I'd have a panic attack. When I was in the subway, I'd have a panic attack. When I was watching the news, I'd have a panic attack. When I was watching The Amazing Race, I'd have a panic attack. Like it was constant. And so they put me through cognitive behavioral therapy. I was just going through the flow and going with the flow and doing whatever my parents thought was best for me. So I went through therapy for I think 12 weeks. I'm not completely sure, but anyways, it wasn't too long. And so I worked with a therapist, and we looked mainly at my thought processes, what I would like, my actions resulting from those thought processes, and we would try to change that. We would try to change the thought processes so that my actions would also be changed as a result, because your thoughts affect your actions, right? And in turn, that affects your emotions, your feelings, right? It's all related. That's the main thing that I learned. And it also taught me to be more mindful about what I was feeling, what I was going through, right? Because I had before therapy, I had very little awareness about like what was going on with myself, because when you're a 9-year-old, you think about having fun. You don't really think about like too much about like yourself, about internal happenings, So I was taught to do all of that at a very young age, and that helped a lot. It's called, well, I guess you could call it mindfulness, and I still practice it today. Sometimes I lose mindfulness, like I'm not very mindful, and that's actually what I find leads to like mental illnesses being bad and being worse, is when I lose touch of myself. And I find it very important to keep that connection with myself, because that's actually a huge preventative measure for me. And so I constantly journal, I constantly do videos like this, just talking about like what's going on through my mind, just for myself, because just gotta keep that connection with myself strong. I can't lose it, because when I lose it, then it won't lead to great things. I'll end up in therapy, right? So I went to therapy from 10 to 14 years old. 14 years old. The details are murky, I'm sorry. And yeah, so I think for a total of 3 times plus counseling, if that counts, so that's 4 times. And at one point, I had social anxiety, a new diagnosis, and I will get into that. So in grade 6, that's what I developed. So I was very shy. I was always a shy person, like at school, but in grade 6, it was particularly bad, and it actually turned into a severe case of social anxiety. So I'm just gonna show you what it turned into, that shyness, okay? I'm gonna show you. And yeah, I'm not exaggerating at all, okay? Yeah. I don't know like how it turned into that. Like I think I started like this, like I was hunched because of shyness, and then it just got to that point. Like it just got worse and worse, like gradually. So my teachers were noticing. There was this counselor that noticed at my school, and that's why she told my parents, and that's basically how my parents found out. Like all I remember was that I dreaded school, and I don't think I was like fully aware of like how bad it was. And it actually haunts me now, because like there's a bunch of people that I went to elementary school with, and they didn't know what I was going through, And sometimes, like today, like I'm afraid to meet my former like elementary students in the eye because, well, what if they don't understand? What if they're not sympathetic, you know? And it's embarrassing also because I really wish that they didn't see that part of me, that suffering part of me. I really wish that I was aware enough to just keep that hidden at school. So, yeah, but sometimes, like, what I learned about mental illnesses is that they sneak up on you. They're insidious. So yeah, that was pretty much grade 6. At that point, when I went back to therapy, the therapists found that they couldn't really, like, the therapy wasn't really working. So my mom finally agreed to putting me on medication, which is like what they thought was the best solution at the time, because since therapy wasn't working. So I was put on fluoxetine, and fluoxetine is a serotonin, it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And what it does is that it pretty much makes more serotonin available in the brain. In grade 6, I was put on 10 milligrams at first of fluoxetine, and that's when I noticed that I went from this to this very slowly, but still, like, I don't think I even went through therapy as I was on the medication that much. And so I was, by the end of grade 6, I was like this. So at least my back was straight, and then in secondary 1, I went to high school. That in Quebec, secondary 1 means the first year of high school. And in secondary 1, my hands were like this, like normal. Everything was normal about my posture. And I think I was on 20 milligrams at that time. So as the dose increased, my social anxiety decreased. So, and as well, I felt more normal, like less anxious all the damn time. And overall, my experience with fluoxetine has been okay. Like, for the most part, it really helped me get through like the transition between elementary school and high school. It helped reduce my social anxiety. I will say that there are a few things I don't like about fluoxetine, and that's why I'm not on it anymore. Even though I've had like even more anxiety problems in my late teens, I refuse to go on medication because now, by the way, I'm not saying like antidepressants are bad. Like, if somebody needs them, then by all means, but for me, like, my experience, like, I find that it kind of numbed my emotions. Like, I felt like just not there, sort of different a little bit. Now, it's not supposed to alter your personality altogether. I just felt like, no, I'm like sedated most of the time, especially on 30 milligrams. So that was the worst, obviously. And past that, I didn't go past that. But yeah, I was just so glad that I came off it, because I felt like, yeah, I was getting anxiety again, especially like the first year after getting off the antidepressant. I was definitely back and I was back to the panic attacks, to all the things that I've had before the medication, even social anxiety. So, but at the same time, I sort of over time came to appreciate who I really am, and I think that's super important. Like, yeah, I'm anxious, I'm super sensitive. I probably would benefit more if I were to be put on medication, but I kind of like it. I kind of like being sensitive because, first of all, it allows me to feel like a lot of emotions and like an overall richness of emotions. And as somebody who writes a lot, just a lot of Wattpad stories, like, it gives me inspiration. Those are like what I feel. It gives me inspiration to like on what to write about. And that's why, like, I think, my anxiety is useful for art. If you look at a lot of artists in history, some of them were, they had mental illnesses, and I guess they used that to help them produce their art, right? Whether it be through writing, through painting, or whatnot. So that's why I sort of don't want to go on medication. Now, if I need it in the future, yeah, of course, like if I have no choice, but I think my first preference would be therapy. So yeah, I'll skip ahead to secondary 4 and secondary 5, which were my last 2 years of high school. I came off the antidepressants, by the way, on like in secondary 3, end of secondary 3, and like I said, I was back and my social anxiety was back, but it wasn't as bad. Like, it didn't affect my posture that much. I mean, the most that happened with my posture is that it became more hunched. But I mean, mostly like I had more depression and more like I had like suicidal thoughts, not so much I mean, I did have anxiety, but the depression I felt was greater than my anxiety. I did mention this as I was talking about like when I was younger, when I was 9 years old, but at that age, when I was like around 9, around 10, I did have suicidal thoughts, kind of. I don't know if it could be called that because, first of all, I think I had a little bit of depersonalization. So, I mean, I'm not a psychologist. No psychologist diagnosed me with depersonalization. But just to give you context, depersonalization means that I'm using the internet. So it says that depersonalization can consist of a detachment within the self regarding one's mind or body, or being a detached observer of oneself. Subjects feel they have changed and that the world has become vague, dreamlike, less real, lacking significance, or being outside reality while looking in. That's exactly how I felt when I was like around 9 or 10. And I think maybe it was the stress of the situation of not knowing what was going on with me that led me to feel that way. At the same time, I had these thoughts that were saying, oh, I wonder what would happen if I were to hold my breath for 10 seconds. Oh, why not 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40, a minute, 2 minutes, you know? And I think there was, I don't know what I was trying to do. I mean, I only attempted holding my breath for like 30 seconds, never more, because I was scared. But it was disturbing anyway, so that's why I'm having a hard time talking about it, because I don't really know why I had those thoughts. And of course I didn't mention it to anybody because I didn't know what to say, even. So yeah, I'll talk about the depression I experienced in secondary 4 and secondary 5. It was more in secondary 5 that I experienced that, so I'll talk about my depression that year. So again, I had suicidal thoughts, and that were more like actual suicidal thoughts compared to when I was like 9 or 10. I didn't know if I could even call it suicidal thoughts back when I was 9 or 10. But anyways, when I was secondary 5, I remember browsing memes a lot. Why I mention this is because I laughed a lot at memes that talked about like depression, like making fun of depression, or not making fun of it, but just like in a sense that you can relate to it, you know. And it made me feel better in the short term about my depression. I was depressed about, I think, about my, like, the way I was. I just felt like I couldn't get the help I needed because I had a ton of work. Like secondary 5 was very stressful. I had 3 very time-consuming subjects, and I wanted to get therapy, but I felt like I had no choice but to deal with it all on my own because I just didn't have the time, and it was super, super challenging. That, you know, so essentially memes helped me cope a lot. That's why I became a meme lover. And but it turned more serious, my depression, when I began to get these thoughts of like, I want to kill myself, you know. And at first it was like, oh, I want to kill myself, like it was, you know, some people say that, but they don't mean it, you know. And at first it was like that for me, like, you know, at school I'd have these thoughts like, oh, I want to kill myself at first, but it was like more like, oh, I'm not actually gonna do it, you know. But then it's like those words sounded more ugly in my head, and I became concerned, and I began to write about it. And I also tried to track how many times I would get those, because I was seriously planning, like, despite my busy schedule, I didn't want it to get to a point where it could be really, really dangerous. So I thought, okay, like, at least I'm going to tell my sister, who's a psychologist. Well, she studied psychology, and she's not a psychologist, but she did some, you know, she worked at TELAID, and TELAID is basically like, people can call, like, they have like any if they're experiencing any distress, they can call that they can call TELAID, and essentially that's what my sister did for a little bit. So, you know, I felt like I could tell her anything, and I did, and she helped me. She told me to be more mindful, and that's what gave me inspiration to track how many times I got those thoughts. It was like around 15 times a day, 15, 1-5. And around the same time, I began writing like my story, my anxiety story, just going back in the past, because I was so fed up of my mental illness, my anxiety and depression. Like, I just wanted to get everything off my chest, like everything. So I turned to writing a Wattpad story, and I believe it's on one of my Instagram accounts. Is a link on my bio. Anyways, it'll be down in the description below if you're really looking for a more in-depth view of my experience. It's hard to talk about it, but it's easier to write about it. Fortunately, those suicidal thoughts, like once I began journaling it, after a few days, they went away. Because, I mean, maybe it was because school was just coming to an end, and I felt better, I felt more relieved, and I felt like, okay, finally I can focus on working on myself, you know, I can finally do, like, spend a lot of time on that Wattpad story and just heal. Like, I'm going to take this entire summer to heal. And I did. I even, at the same time, I even meditated. I began meditating. At that point, I was just trying to do anything, right? Just to heal, you know? Just to figure out what's wrong with me. And, yeah, so I would just sit, or actually lie down rather, and I would listen to solfeggio frequencies, and which apparently heal your mind. Well, I'm skeptical, so I'm not even going to get into that, but anyways, I would listen to them for like an hour or two at a time every single day for 2 weeks. And I would just let myself experience every single emotion. So that just came to me. So at times I was sobbing for a long time, just letting myself sob and sob, like just get rid of it, you know? And I would just also experience anxiety. My heart was beating a lot sometimes as I was meditating. I just let that happen, you know? I was just trying to like squeeze all the anxiety and depression out, like squeeze it out, you know? And until it just left my system. It helped a lot. I don't know why, but it helped. After those 2 weeks, I felt rejuvenated. I felt like I had gone to a spa. I felt like I had bathed in a long time in the sunshine, and I felt finally that you know, finally free, you know. And I also finished my Wattpad story, and I felt even better after writing my Wattpad story. So I guess what I learned that summer is it's important to first of all write about it or speak about it, but don't ignore it, because it's just not good. I think if you ignore it, it will consume you even more. So definitely don't ignore it. Let yourself experience the emotions. Try to understand them. But you don't have to try to understand them. Sometimes they just are. Okay? And sometimes they'll just pass, maybe, if you let them, you know, if you let yourself experience them. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stop my experience there, as, like, pretty much after that, I didn't really experience any, like, chronic anxiety or depression. I felt like, you know, those 2 tips that I just gave y'all, like, I still do that sometimes when I feel particularly like I might come down with anxiety and depression again. I just do them. I write about it, I sit down and meditate, let myself experience those emotions, and it heals me. And I feel like that's what's keeping me from relapsing. I mean, different people have different ways of coping with it, but that's just my way. And I feel like it's the most direct way too, because it really forces me to confront those emotions. So yeah, just and like, I guess I'm gonna talk about the present, and I'm thinking of getting therapy again for the 5th time. Probably won't be my last, because you know what, you know, there's no cure. You just gotta go with it. And yeah, I'm gonna get therapy soon, definitely, because I feel like I can't be happy by myself. So I'm gonna learn how to be happy by myself, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to healing once again. So yeah, I hope this video helped everybody. It was definitely harder than I expected to talk about what I went through, because I talked about it many times before with other people, but never like all in one shot, you know, or never like all on the same day, or like at least in speech. So yeah, it's just hard. I feel anxious right now because this story just made me realize that I went through a lot. And a lot of what I went through was really scary. So, yeah. So, thank you for listening to this video. I am going to speed this video up because just to make it shorter, I do take my time a lot when I speak because I'm thinking a lot. There's a lot of thoughts going through my mind, so that's just how I am. That's why it's a challenge to speak sometimes. So, yeah. Have a nice day, everybody. Take care of yourself in this shit show of a year, and especially your mental health. And, yeah, just have a nice day, everybody. Week, night. And